My name is Naomi Shira, and I'm a program manager with the Creative Economy Practice, and I'm based out of the Nairobi office. Welcome all to Fashionomics Africa Accelerator online program. Today we'll be covering setting expectations and developing a pitch deck. Kindly note that translations are available in English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic. We request that you select your language of choice. Welcome to today's session, and while you wait, please turn on your cameras if you can, and share in the chat what you're looking to get out of the session today. Before we start, here are some ground rules. Switch on your camera if you can. Use the chat box to ask questions. Do not raise your hand. We request that you use the chat box to ask questions. What we discuss here stays here. Your microphone will be muted, and again, we request that you use the chat box to ask questions. Participate actively and also ensure that you give space to others to participate. Please ensure that your Zoom name matches your registration name. This is for the purpose of taking attendance. Attendance will be taken anytime during the session. So again, we ask you ensure that your Zoom name matches your registration name so that you are not marked absent. Today, our facilitator is Yandile Nuku, who is a regional program manager at the Startup Support Unit at CC Hub. Yandile has previously worked as a founding business partner, Youth Championing Advisory Board member, and as a business, finance, investment, and trade journalist. She comes with a wealth of knowledge on setting expectations and developing a pitch deck. We are delighted to have you here with us, Yandile. Welcome to today's session. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Naomi, for the introduction. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon for everyone? I think it's afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to come in and join this session around developing your pitch deck. So as Naomi said, I am part of what we call the Startup Support Function under Co-Creation Hub, which is part of the bigger group where the Creative Economy Practice is also part of. So we have the privilege of running some of your largest programs that reach startups across the continent. And part of the work that we do includes looking through a lot of pitch decks, but also helping startups that go through our programming in terms of developing that pitch deck. So we do what we call pitch sprints, where we assist startups and offer advisory from that front. So today I'm going to be sharing some of our experiences around pitch deck development. Of course, there's a standard template that one should follow when they're developing a pitch deck. We'll touch on that. But before that, I thought it was important to talk a little bit about the mindset that you should carry and have as you prepare to develop your pitch deck, or as you prepare to engage with an audience, whether it's investors, strategic partners, or talent that you're looking to onboard into your organization or your business, or a market that you're looking to enter. And then we'll talk a little bit about the psychological safety. I find that, you know, it is said that public speaking is one of the scariest things for humans to do on earth. And so I thought it's important for me to also touch on an aspect around, you know, the type of mindset that I think you should carry to help you and with your nerves and to calm you down as you prepare to present before a panel of judges or wherever you might find yourself doing a presentation. And then we'll touch on pitch deck elements, specific key segments that you should definitely have in your pitch deck, which you can tailor-make as and when, depending on the type of audience or the intent of why it is that you're pitching. And then at the end, I'll close it off with touching on some of the pitfalls that I've personally seen from a support side, but also from anybody who's pitching as somebody on the receiving end. And then we'll close it off with a few links to resources that you can look through your spare time post this presentation. So please feel free to drop in any comments, any questions on the chat section as I go. I believe Naomi and Omlabake will be assisting me to be up to speed with anything anybody is saying on the chat section. So yeah, we can get straight into it. Omlabake, I'll be giving you a heads up as and when you should go to the next slide. So I think the first thing when you're starting, you're developing your pitch deck, and I believe you've now gone through a series of learning sessions relevant to all aspects of business or yourself as a fashion entrepreneur, what you need to have at the beginning of your mind, at the beginning when you're starting the pitch deck process. I think it's important to define what it is that you want from a pitch. I know it's the common ask, but like I said before, sometimes as a business or as a founder, individual sole founder, you realize that you might not actually be at the stage in which you can attract any funding into your business or your startup or your idea. And so therefore, that would mean when you're starting in your initial stages, you're probably pitching and presenting to maybe a potential strategic partner who will help you with your access to market. You're probably pitching to high value talent that you feel together they can come in and complement what you're already doing. So it's important to define what it is that you want, okay? And if it is funding, it's also important at the back of your mind to have a rough range of what sort of funding that you're looking for and how much it is. As I'll touch on, I think, towards the end, the different types of funding that you could probably access as a fashion entrepreneur or as a startup founder. You can go to the next slide, Omlabake. Okay. So one of the core things that we've seen, and I think from my end as well, having gone through a lot of pitch decks and, being through the selection, part of a selection panel in different programs, is that business owners or founders that stand out from the get-go are those that are quite clear in terms of what that story is, okay? Now, knowing your story is quite important. You won't necessarily include this in the content within your pitch deck, but it will be apparent in how you communicate the content of your pitch deck. For instance, your story in terms of your background and what inspired you to start the business that you're in, what inspired you specifically to get into fashion. When you try and cross that story, you've already done a lot of the work that helps with getting in touch with your audience and emotionally attaching with your audience. The second thing would be how your product and fashion or whatever aspect of the fashion ecosystem or value chain you're operating in, what's the solution into the current challenges that exist, and why does that particular solution matter? So why does your product matter in the market? How is it adding value to the customers or consumers that you're targeting? The last thing that I think is important when you're preparing your pitch deck and as you continue to practice is to consistently and continuously think about this question: why should I give you my attention? Okay. So as you prepare your pitch deck and as you communicate with audiences, be clear at the back of your mind that with every deck, every slide that you include in your pitch deck, you're answering the question of why somebody should give you the attention at that particular specific moment. Next slide, Omlabake. So as you prepare again and you answer the question of why should somebody give you the attention, the popular question should then be, subsequent question should then be, why should somebody invest in you? Why should somebody partner with you? Why should somebody work with you or work for you? And why now, right? What's the urgency in what it is that you're doing? And most specifically, why you? And if you remember, according to the previous slide, your story is going to answer the why you. And it's important to answer this one because we live in a world where, economics, there will always be a scarcity of resources. And therefore, wherever you're asking for assistance and wherever you're asking for extra funding or extra partners, they've got probably 10x more opportunities also competing for their attention. So it's important for you to re-emphasize why the solution that you're bringing and the business that you're running is urgent now, and it should be invested in now. And as you prepare your deck, similar to the previous slide, with every word, I've seen this the slide with too much information. And one of the ways that you can use to benchmark or to filter which information is relevant or not, as you populate your slides and your decks based on the structure that I'll give throughout the presentation, you should ask yourself, how is every single word and sentence that I'm placing on my deck increasing the chances of getting a yes based on the ask that I've defined at the initial stages of this? Another rule that I think is important when you're preparing your deck and your mindset is the law of demonstrating versus describing. So it's very important as a founder or as a fashion entrepreneur to always try as much as possible to include facts in what you say, include information that you can validate as a founder, and include research-based statements in your pitch deck. So it's very important for you not to describe what you want to do or the opportunity that comes, but to demonstrate it with facts and actual numbers. And in your case, for example, I'll touch on this a little bit later, when we're talking about things such as your market traction, it's important for you to actually let us know with the products that you're currently selling, how many of them have been sold in the market, how many are you looking to sell, and which part of your research suggests that you can actually sell 10x more than what you're currently selling. The fourth thing that I think is important, if you ever do get the chance, Mlabaki, I think we're at group exercise now. Please refer back to the previous slide. Previous slide, please. So the fourth thing that I think is important in terms of mindset, previous slide, you're going to the previous slide, not the next slide. So one thing that you'll realize in any given situation, I don't know if you're already aware of who are going to be in your panel, should you get the opportunity to pitch your idea or your business. But in any given front, whenever you have an audience, it's important for you to research on who you're going to be talking to in the room. And common ways in which you can do this, of course, is a LinkedIn search, Google search, Twitter search. And these platforms, don't just use them for following, use them to actually try and understand the psychology of your audience, but also what these people actually care about. This is going to help you when you're preparing and packaging your message before any given audience, okay? And the last part that I'll touch on, that you prepare yourself with a mindset that you should be curious of beyond just preparing your deck, is that in any given moment in a room, we've got individuals with different decision-making matrix. And so people make decisions based on different things. You'll have someone in your audience who's going to make a decision about you who depends more on facts. So no matter how much you tell your story and where you're from, your background, and why there's a need to solve this challenge, if your numbers are not making sense and they're not seeing any data and facts, chances are they'll give you a low score. At the same time, there's somebody in the room who is more attached to the impact that you want to make. They want to see more validation, whether it's imagery, pictures in your deck, and they want to understand the story behind the person who's solving the challenge or the person who's proposing a solution at the table. So at any given moment, you've got these different types of people. Then you've got the last one who's in the middle. All right. They also want facts, but they also do acknowledge the importance of your story and your emotional impact and your emotional attachment to the challenges that you're currently trying to solve. So I think it's important for you to tailor make for these three types of people in the room at any given moment. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, while I wait for the tech team to go to the next slide, is we want to know in the chat section quickly as I move on to the next deck. Maybe you can share some examples if any ideas have been coming to your mind as I've been speaking on what you might want to say to an investor to make them want to invest in you, okay? Invest in your idea, invest in your business within fashion, textile, apparel, or the accessories business. So please feel free to drop your comments in the chat section if you've been getting any ideas. I'll take a pause for about 2 minutes before I go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, one says, I'd like to learn how to sell with emotion without so many words. Okay. Omlabake, Naomi, I'll depend on you to try and filter the messages. We'll come back to this as I go through the presentation. So as you keep thinking about this, and I'll put you on the spot, but keep thinking about it and writing it down, what you think could be your main ask. The last part that I think is important in preparing you, in preparation, is to your psychological safety and the mindset that you get into the room with before you make a presentation, okay? So you must remember that at any given moment, your audience wants you to succeed, okay? So there's nobody who's gonna give you 5 minutes, because I think a standard pitching time is 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of that time, if they're expecting you to fail or they're looking out for you to fail. Everybody is looking for an opportunity that they can invest in, or an opportunity or an idea that can make the world a better place, or a product in your case. So everybody wants you to succeed. Hold that at the back of your mind, okay? The second thing is paying attention to your inner voice and keeping it under control. You'll realize, I think this is human nature. As you speak, there'll always be a voice that either tells you you've messed up, or you're probably not going in the right direction. And if you're in a room where you can actually see people's faces, you might judge the way people are looking at you, and you might drop the ball because your inner voice is saying you're not going in the right direction. So it's very important for you to control that and practice having a positive inner voice, but also ignoring the negative voice that might come as and when you present in real time. Now, all this is important because I've seen it affect the way in which a founder or talent presents the idea before an audience, okay? So it's not just what we're going to get into in terms of the elements of your pitch deck, but it's actually also how you're going to prepare your pitch deck and eventually pitch. The third thing is, I don't think there's anything such as failure. Of course, if you're pitching for funding, that's great. If you do get the funding, that's great. But what we've seen over the years, but also what I've seen in my experience, is that it's very rare for you as a founder or an entrepreneur to pitch and get what you're asking for immediately, okay? So there's always going to be a due diligence phase where people validate and check what you said you do and how far you said you've gone and what you say you have, if that's actually really true, okay? So at any given moment, the least that's going to happen to you is you're going to get good insights from your panel that'll give you feedback to improve. In your case, if you've got a fashion garment, whatever you're producing in fashion, that's a product or the service that you're offering, you're going to get feedback in real time from potential customers and potential investors on how you can improve, okay? And the fourth one is still building to the last point as well. Think about your pitching platform or any opportunity where you present before an audience as an opportunity to build relationship currency. Now, like I've said, it's very rare for you to be invested in immediately after you make a pitch. It usually happens over a period of time after the due diligence phase and after whoever has decided to invest in you gets to know you a little bit better. So think about the moment of presenting your pitch deck as, you've already ticked the box in terms of progress. It's an opportunity for you to build relationship currency and continue the conversation forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next slide is on, I was just trying to catch up with some of your quick comments on why somebody should invest in you, or what your ask would be at any given moment that you can think about on your feet. So now let's talk about packaging your business opportunity. We're now getting to the core of it, where you'll get to know about, the structure that you need to have and the key elements that you'll probably have within your pitch deck. Now, the assumption is that most of these points that I'm going to point out, you've learned in your previous sessions. So a pitch deck is really consolidating and summarizing all those learning sessions, but also trying to consolidate your experiences in the shortest time possible to communicate the opportunity that you have for your audience. So what I've seen in terms of packaging your business opportunity, or in your case in the fashion industry, is you need to be specific about what your mission is and the opportunity that you have for your audience, okay? Now, this is strongly linked to your story that I shared at the beginning, okay? So if you're seen as somebody who is mission driven, when you're packaging your story and when you're communicating, your likelihood of being successful through your pitch increases. The second thing is your vision, okay? Maybe your theory of change. What difference would you like to see based on the product or the service that you're offering within the fashion industry? If that's clear, you can paint a picture, it increases your ability to communicate well with your audience and to get a favorable response. The third thing is your strategy around the opportunity that you've identified. We're going to touch on this, I think, when we talk about what's your unique value proposition. Okay, so everybody, what you realize in the world, they always say there isn't a new idea. Like nobody has nobody has 100% ownership of ideas in the world. If you have an idea, chances are you've got 1,000 or 1,000,000 other people in the world that have the same idea. But the difference is you, your background, your story, and where you find yourself in this world that determines how you approach in solving the problem that you've identified and the type of solution that you end up coming up with. And that revolves around the strategy, okay? And the last point is your knowledge. So it's very important for you not to look at your business in silos, okay? So you should always think about your business from an ecosystem point of view and from a value chain point of view. In other words, these days, the word that is always at the back of an investor's mind or in the world when we talk about sustainable development goals, we talk about the word impact. And within impact, when somebody is listening to you, they want to invest in your idea, they want to invest in your business. One of the things that they think about is, who else does this person affect? Who else does this person impact? And you'll realize that as a founder, as you think about your idea and your business and your product from an ecosystem and a value chain perspective, you increase the spectrum or the boundaries of your potential to grow and scale as a business owner or as a product owner, and you increase your potential for growth. One of the key things around pitching and asking for funding is people will always ask you, what's the opportunity for scaling and how quickly can you grow? Okay. Will I get a return on investment for the money that I'm going to put into your business? Will I get a return on investment for the time I'll put into your business if I'm a talent that you're pitching to? If I'm a strategic business partner, will I also get value from your business should I partner with you? And so thinking about things from an ecosystem and a value chain perspective enables you to open yourself up to that world of opportunity. Not only that, it also improves your ability to think about what is in it for them. So every time you pitch as a founder, you don't think about your product and your business and what you need immediately. You always almost have to answer the question of, what's in it for you that I'm pitching to? And so the more you think about your business and the challenges that you're solving and the products that you have from an ecosystem and a value chain point of view, it improves your chances of getting a yes, if not now, in the near future. So that's the word around packaging your business opportunity. Next slide, please. So now we're going to touch on the key elements of your pitch deck. Now, there's a lot of information online around pitch decks. And you'll see in some of the links that we've also shared for you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Omlabake or Naomi? Pitch deck elements. Okay, maybe give me sharing rights because the presentation is still on the same screen. So let me share my screen on my end. So the next segment that I want to touch on is around pitch deck elements. So this is where now you're starting to practically work on your pitch deck and working on the content within your pitch deck. Now that we've dealt with the sort of mindset that you should approach preparing a pitch deck with, but also key things that you need to do extra research on in preparation. So the first slide before this one, I'll just say it because it's not showing, is a logo in your cover page, have that. If it's an image of your product, have that. And then a short description of what it is that you do, your product, but I'll assume if you're a business, a brief description, not more than 140 to 150 characters. You don't want to put too much information. And then, make sure that your name, your email, as well as your website is there. Now you can decide, depending on how clean your slide looks, name, email, and website. You can also include this at the very, very last slide of your pitch deck when you're saying thank you for the time to be able to make your presentation. The second thing around pitch deck elements, to be very effective in how you communicate, I think it's important to then be clear in terms of what the problem you're trying to solve is, okay? So just brainstorming from the top of my mind, this is not necessarily relevant to everybody in the room in the fashion space, but I know that when it comes to fashion, you can also frame your business in a way that it's also speaking to climate action. Now, we know that climate change is a huge problem across the world. And so you have to be specific in terms of the problem that your product is solving, even if it might find itself in the creative industry. Okay. You need to use data for this, as I said before. Remember, demonstrate, don't describe. So use as much as data to really highlight how what you're doing is a challenge, a very big challenge, and why this challenge needs to be solved urgently, almost now, and why you need somebody's resources to be able to do that. And then talk a little bit about what's currently been existing. So if it's you're a fashion entrepreneur, what's in the market that is similar to what you're doing, and what is the challenge with how things have currently been going, and how are you proposing an alternative solution that is either cheaper or is bringing more value to the table or meeting your customers' needs more efficiently or effectively. And the fourth thing around your pitch deck elements is you then have to be able to describe your solution. In your case, we normally deal a lot with technology startups. So in the tech space, it would be demonstrating exactly how your technology solution works in the market or how you want it to actually work. And in your case, you never know, you might find an opportunity to apply tech into your business, or you're thinking about it in the future, but also you can demonstrate, how somebody could put on your fashion product, or how somebody can use your fashion product with different other clothing that they might have, depending on which part of the market that you're providing a solution for with your product in the market, okay? It's important not to put in too much information, just give somebody enough data, whether it's a picture or a process, enough for them to actually get a clear picture of what your product is and the process of how you actually produce your product and how it works. And then the part of why now we've covered on this, so I'll just skip that, talk a little bit about why now and how you're different from the status quo. And then I've touched on how does it work, and that you should, at the very least, if you don't have a tech product and it's a physical fashion product, at least show how a user can use your product after they purchase it, or your process to production. The next slide, please. So in the next slide, as I wait for Mlabaki to go to the next slide, is around the market opportunity. So usually when you're doing pitch decks, and this might have been addressed in your previous learning sessions, usually with a market, you should be able to, indicate the total value of your market, okay? So how much value is in your market? How many consumers are in your market total, right? Even the ones that you might not necessarily be able to reach. And within that, that's where you need to now back it up with data and facts. Say, okay, we've got 2 million potential customers in this market. And these 2 million customers, this is their income, and this is how much they're most likely to spend in our industry when it comes to fashion, depending on whether you're at the luxury end or you're meeting the basic needs of your consumers. And then you have to talk a little bit about what you're currently servicing. So the consumers that you're currently able to service with your product in the fashion industry, how many are they in proportion to the total addressable market? So what are you currently able to service as a founder or as a business owner? This will enable your audience to be able to make a decision by themselves to say, okay, there's potential here. We've got, let me see the names in the room. I think I see Dianga. I hope I said your name correctly. We've got Dianga. Dianga is selling 1,000 garments, 1,000 fashion products. But they're saying in this market, there's 500,000 people who could potentially use this product, okay? So you need to indicate that. What's the big market opportunity? So how do we help them to close that gap or to reach that remaining customer base or consumers that they haven't been able to reach? And then with the business models are different. Sometimes you'll hear people saying, is it B2B? Is it B2C? Is it B2B2C? Or is it C2C? So B2B is business to business. As a fashion designer, a fashion entrepreneur, are you producing products for big retailers? Is it business to business? And those retailers are then going to sell to your ordinary consumers. So B2B2C, right? So you need to know what your business model is. Or as a fashion entrepreneur, am I going to sell directly to these consumers who can just reach me on Facebook? They don't necessarily need to walk into a store to buy my product, okay? That will mean you're B2C, okay? Or are you going to create, because I don't know how far you're thinking around your business or the learning what other learning sessions I've covered. If you're thinking about maybe I want to develop an app or a marketplace where I can sell my products to the consumers. But not only that, this marketplace will also be for other fashion designers who will also sell their products on this platform. Then in this case, you're both B2B as well as B2C. Does that make sense? So you need to think about what your business model is around the product that you're currently developing and how you intend to make money based on the type of customer that you've defined. Is it a business or is it a consumer? And then around business model, you'll then have things such as, knowing what your break even is, right? When you talk about a business model, I see it talks about having a positive cash flow. So in your business model, when you're thinking about whether it's a B2B, whether it's a B2C, you're going to start to also think around, well, how do we cost the products that we're producing, the fashion products that we're producing, and what's the markup that we're going to put, okay? If it's costing us $100 US to produce, are we going to put a 50% markup and make it $150 to sell to the retailer? Or are we going to make it $112 US and put a markup of $12 if we're selling directly to the consumer? These are all the decisions that you'll be based with that will help you to make decisions on the type of business model that you want to have. And then we get to the aspect of the go-to-market strategy, okay? So you need to also have a slide in your deck where you talk about this business model that you've defined. Is it a B2B? Is it a B2C? Is it a C2C? How am I going to reach this market? You have to first define them. What does my ideal consumer and customer look like? And the second thing is, how will I reach them from the point of production to transporting my product to them? Okay. And then you also want to talk about the different channels and how to reach them. How are you going to make sure that these customers or consumers know about you? Okay. And not just know about you, that they want to actually work with you. Okay. How are you going to market yourself? Are you going to go there and pitch? Are you going to ensure that your social media is well kept so that when somebody, after you reach out via a cold email and somebody goes to your social media platforms, they can see all your fashion products and want to invite you for a follow-up meeting or invite you to explore a potential partnership with you, okay? And when we talk about go-to-market, you also think about pricing, the example that I previously gave around your business model. How are you going to price the products that you have in the market? And depending on the business model that you've decided on, as an example that I gave, it's going to dictate how you price your products in the industry. Okay. And the last part in terms of go-to-market strategy, it talks about your unique value proposition. So amongst all these people that are all these competitors in the market that are offering your same product, your same garment, what makes you different? What's your unique value proposition? You need to be able to communicate this on your deck with your audience so that they can decide to give you the attention, but also decide to invest in you and not in anybody else who's also pitching for support. In terms of traction, I think I touched on this earlier. So attraction is very important for you. If you're a fashion entrepreneur, be able to tell us production. How much have you produced over how long? How long did it take you to produce the amount of products that you've produced? How much have you been able to sell from what you've produced? And how long does your inventory or your fashion products, do they stay in your warehouse or do they stay in your house before they're actually sold in the market? So those are just basic examples of how you can prove your traction and how you can communicate how you're performing as a fashion entrepreneur to prospective buyer or prospective investor. Okay, so it's clear traction usually in the main terms will say what's your revenue like and what's your profit, and the difference between revenue and profit. With profit, you've now deducted the cost of production that you would have incurred as a fashion entrepreneur to produce that product or to sell it. Okay. Traction can also be how much you've raised funding in. Okay. So we've seen this in some of the programs that we run on the continent at CC Hub, where it's a strong indicator when you come across an entrepreneur or a startup that has also previously raised funding. So it's a strong indicator that you're probably able to invest in them, or probably they have the right governance structures in place to handle other people's money and they're accountable and responsible, okay? So if you have received any funding from somewhere, it doesn't have to be millions. Even if maybe you've received $1,000, you've received $10,000 in grant funding to move from point A to B as a fashion entrepreneur, that is part of your traction. You need to state that we've so far raised so much funding. Most importantly, this is what we've done with it, okay? So you're building your case. Remember, the first slide is, why should I give you my attention and why should I invest in you? And also, every time you're putting information, how is this increasing my chances of getting a yes? Okay. The last part is around the ask on your pitch deck elements. I already touched on it at the very, very beginning to say, what is your ask? Okay. I know some of you have put on some thoughts on your chat section. How much are you asking for? And where are you going to use this money that you've asked for? Okay. Usually a startup will come or a founder will come, and there are key areas where they will invest this money. Okay. They'll choose and they'll actually break it down into a table. They'll say, okay, I'm looking for $100,000. And from this $100,000, I plan to spend 30% on marketing. I plan to spend 40% on production. And I plan to spend the remaining percent on a bit of the remaining funding on technology for production. And then I plan to spend the remaining amount on my talent and human capital to help us to hire more experienced talent to help us to serve the market that we're targeting and to increase the quality of our products in the fashion industry, right? So you need to define your ask and also think through what it is you want to use that money on. Remember, it's always going to come down to the due diligence. Even if you present and somebody says, yes, I'll invest, they'll take you through the due diligence phase and start to question some of your costing and how you've costed, what you say you need and what you've used to arrive at the amount that you said you've asked for. So let's go to the next slide, please. I think I've already touched the next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So this is just the basic summary of what you need to include. Remember, I said there's so much information around pitch decks, and depending on the audience that you're presenting to, you're going to leave out some information and you're going to put out some information. You might have audiences where you need to include all of this information. Now, I've already touched on use of funds. I think the two areas that I probably didn't touch on is your team, as well as your financial projections, historical or forecasts. So obviously from a team point of view, it's always advisable to have your team, but also include, if you have any experience, I'll start with experience, not necessarily academic qualifications, okay? In the fashion industry, what have you done so far to date as a leader, as a founder? How many products have you produced to date? You know, the amount, I want to shy away from saying years of experience, because you might be 5 years in the fashion industry, but you've probably only produced like 50 products, but somebody who comes in a space of 2 years produces way more than you. So things like traction, how much experience have you had in the industry? And of course, include your academics. Academics is important if you do have it, because it says, for things like, for instance, funding, people want to know, can the people in the team handle finances? Will they be responsible with the finances? Will they know how to account and report on these finances? So put your experience and put your background, academics, if it's there, included as well. And what I think is important with your team, when you're presenting this as a founder, don't just read out that, oh, I have so much experience and this is our academic background in your team. Talk about what uniquely positions yourself and your team member to play an important role in your business, okay? What uniquely positions them is based on their unique experiences, based on their story and their background, academic background, if it's there, what uniquely positions them to set you up for success based on the opportunity, market opportunity that you would have described at the earlier stages of your pitch deck. So it's important to try and highlight what makes everybody stand out and what makes everybody unique, okay? So remember, so the story part, you see, it keeps coming up everywhere. It's really important. And your financials, there are core financial statements that you usually include, but I think at the most basic stage, would be your cash flow statement, where you give an illustration if you've been operating, give an illustration of what your cash inflows have been like. You might want to take a snapshot from January to December to say, this is how much cash came into the business, whether it's through a sale, over 12 months, okay? And this is how much we predict will come in over the next 12 months. And also, okay, I see a point of, let me just finish this point on financials. And also, if you have expenses, if you're already operational, it's important. Remember, I said demonstrate, don't describe. So if you've been operational, one would expect you to be able to briefly highlight the expenses that you've had over a period of time, if you choose to say in 12 months, or if you choose to say 2 to 3 years. But because the world of business changes so frequently these days, it's usually advisable to stay between 12 months and 3 years when you want to predict or when you want to show us how you've performed, okay? Yeah, I think, and then what we call a profit and loss statement, where you share a little bit about the profit that you've made, but also the expenses that you've made over that period of time. Yeah, I think at the most basic front, that's what you can include in your financials when you're doing your pitch deck at its most basic form. I think, let me just see if I've got any questions. Next slide, please, in the meantime, Labake. So if you don't have a team, it's perfectly fine. Include yourself alone as a founder. And it's important for you, if you are alone and you don't have a team, to remember, if you're a sole entrepreneur, you are a huge risk in terms of investment because there aren't necessarily structures around you. And I know common challenges between sole entrepreneurs is that one cannot distinguish between their business and their personal lives. So if you're coming in as a sole founder, it's also a risk highlight to somebody on the other side that I might invest this in this person, in this individual, and tomorrow they've bought a car, or they've decided to spend money on family expenses and etc. So it's fine to include yourself as a one person, but I'll advise that as you include yourself as a one person, speak to more what your aspirations are as a founder, that you want to get a team. What some people usually do in their pitch decks, they will include roles that they want to hire, expand with, and then put a question mark where they would have otherwise put a picture. So they're indicating to the audience that I'm alone, but I'm thinking about hiring these key roles in my organization. And therefore, if you fund me, these are some of the roles that we will be able to put in place. And I'll transition from being a sole founder or a sole entrepreneur to actually having a team that could seize this opportunity. I thought I would touch on the last point in terms of common pitfalls that I've seen around pitch decks. So the color and design is very important. Remember at the beginning, I said that with your audience, there are those who love to see visuals, okay? Those who, the moment you put in your presentation slide and your first page is appealing, you've captured their attention, okay? They want to listen to you throughout. And, you know, one of the key things around here is I've seen challenges where people are not even using colors that match in a deck. So I think if you just Googled, is it a color matrix? I'm forgetting the name, but just Google which colors should go together. I think this is common in art. There's certain colors that you can mix together. They'll give you a different color. But if you Google that, you'll be able to pick colors that you can put together. Thank you, a color palette. So you'll be able to pick which colors that you can use in your pitch deck, 2 or 3. And I always advise to be minimalistic. So as much as you can, if you can use more white in your deck and then complement with other colors, I think that would be great to achieve that minimalistic and professional look and feel to your presentation. And then in terms of design as well, be very minimalistic in terms of the information and content that you present. Remember, when you're presenting, we're not here to read another book as you present in your deck. We're here to listen to you and your story. What you put on your deck is meant to complement what you say, so that as you speak, we are able to validate what it is that you're saying on your deck, okay? So that's an important piece of information that you should include. The third thing that I often see people making mistakes in is preparing your pitch deck a week before your pitch or 3 days before. So you're setting yourself up for failure. A pitch deck is something you grow through, okay? You're documenting your journey in a summarized format. So you literally, as you grow in your business, you need to go back to your pitch deck and add more information, whether it's your traction. As you go through your business and your story, you interact with more communities, more people in the market, you go back to your pitch deck, you add information to your pitch deck based on your experience as you progress. So a pitch deck is not a one-time event. It's a long-term process that you go through as you journey through your entrepreneurship journey as a fashion entrepreneur, okay? So, and what we normally do sometimes in startup support with our teams that we support, we do what we call pitch sprints, okay? A pitch sprint is, we will give you an opportunity to go and do your pitch deck, and then we'll give you 10 minutes of our time to come and present to us as the CC Hub Startup Support team. And in those 10 minutes, we'll give schedule, literally 30 minutes in your schedule. Give yourself a time for a pitch sprint where you pitch to yourself, record yourself, and pitch your business, pitch your product, and re-listen to yourself. You are your biggest judge. That you're going to get, your intuition and your instinct is going to remind you of things that you should probably include, on things they should probably exclude. And as I speak of intuition and instinct, I want to go back to the point and re-emphasize that there's so much information around pitch decks that you need to consider, but at the end of the day, you are in the driver's seat. You're going to pick exactly how much information you include in your deck that will help you communicate your story and communicate your ask in the most effective and efficient manner. Okay. And the last part is, I think I've already touched on this in terms of focusing on creating a pitch deck and not developing the story within the pitch deck. So it's very common that when you want to do a pitch deck, people get concerned about sounding good before a panel and not worrying about actually having a good story and having good traction. So in some cases, you might find yourself two scenarios. You've got a really good speaker, a really good presenter. They present in the business, they speak well. But when we look at the traction and what they do, they don't really perform well. But you have somebody, another founder, who can't really speak well, can't really communicate well. But when we look at their numbers and their traction in their business, they make us interested to go a step further into their business and to see how we can support. So never miss, as much as you're now curating your pitch deck, all the other learning sessions that you've gone through, the story is more important than how you sound. So it's you cannot focus just on having a good pitch deck, and yet the content of your pitch deck is not going to help you to get a yes from your ask. And so the last point is re-emphasizing on that point around consolidating your business experience. So look at a pitch deck as a snapshot and a summary of your business journey, your business experience, your impact, and your potential and where you want to go. And you're trying to communicate to get partners on board, to give them an opportunity to grow with you. I think that's about it. Do you have a next slide, Mlabake? Can you just check, please? So I think the last slide, if I was to just round it up and just like I did at the beginning, I think some of the points I gave you at the beginning was around the mindset that I tried to share was also building around your confidence. But as you prepare, you're done with your content, you had the right mindset as you're preparing your deck, you also need to have confidence boosters. And I think when I was speaking about pitch sprints will also help you in terms of boosting your confidence. So, and that's the point of practice, to help you to be more comfortable in how you speak, but also in your story, so that even if you receive a question that you did not anticipate, it does not throw you off guard and you do not panic and drop the ball. You're calmly able to digest what it is you're being asked, and you'll be able to respond in a way that benefits you. Okay. So again, re-emphasizing on the mindset, I think I touched on this earlier, that even if you meet only 60% of the criteria, still apply for the opportunity and put yourself forward. If you don't win, it is an opportunity to practice. So this still speaks to, what I had said at the beginning, to say, at the very least, your success factor in presenting is that you've got an opportunity to get feedback, and you've gotten an opportunity to build relationship currency with people that can continue to follow your journey. And then the third point, again, re-emphasizes on the voices that I spoke about. You need to learn how to ignore or control the negative voice that comes into your mind as you present that you're not good enough or you're dropping the ball. And the third point is around challenging your beliefs about yourself that undermine your confidence, and practice some positive affirmations to say, I'm a really great speaker. I'm a really great trainer. I'm a really great fashion entrepreneur. I've got a really great product, and the market will benefit from this. Okay. And then the last slide is around resources. So we've got a few resources that we've put together for you. You can go and look at practical examples. I think on these decks, you'll also find that categorized into the type of business models they have, whether they're B2B, B2C, whether they're marketplace, and you'll be able to go through that pitch decks. Next slide, please, Umlabake. You'll be able to go to these platforms like the 20 pitch decks from successful companies from around the world, but particularly under 15 pitch decks from big fashion startups. You'll be able to see practical examples from some of the insights and information that I've shared with you here today. But remember, as you go through these decks, not everything is relevant for you. So pick what is relevant for you, what resonates with you, and what will help you to communicate your story in a most effective manner. I think that's about it. Thank you so much. Maybe we can check in. So Mlabake, just confirm that this slide will be shared with everyone, or do I need to share these links on the chat section?
The slides will be shared with them. You don't need to share them.
Okay, cool. I guess we can open up the floor to any comments, questions.
So Yandile, we've been collating some questions as we've been going along. So there's a couple of questions to start us off. So the first question is, what would be the ideal number of pages for a pitch deck? Then again, talking about traction and mentioning funding that you've got, does funding from a friend or family member count?
So I'll say yes, it does count. So it's part of your traction. If that's what I think the most important thing in business is governance, to be able to prove to your audience that you are trustworthy, you're somebody with integrity. So if you receive $1,000 US from your family and you said you invested in exactly where you said you were going to invest in, and then your business grew as a result of that, that's worth mentioning. Okay. And your family and your friends know you more than I would as an external investor. I think that's the most important thing. If you've received funding before, as a founder, whether it's from family and friends, your investors or potential partners will tend to scrutinize you more because we want to know that you've been diligent with the resources that you've received. So I think you can include that, but be able to show where you've used these funds and where you currently are now based on the progress you've made as a result of receiving those funds. What's the other question, Naomi? Oh, number of slides.
So this next question will be just
sorry, I think there was I think there was another question on the number of decks. Sorry, Naomi. Let's say 12. Let's say for every point that I mentioned. So I mentioned the summary of your company. That's your opening slide, right? What's your problem? Slide 2. What's your solution that you're proposing? 3. What is your market? 4. Your market opportunity. What's the total market? And what's the market that you're currently addressing? The market opportunity that you hope to address given more funding. What does your business model look like? What's your go-to market strategy? Your financials, okay? And then your team, and then your ask. What are you asking for? The main ask, right? So that's a total, that brings me to 9 slides, but I said 12, just in case what we've seen is that, your go-to market strategy or your the market slide, or your go-to market strategy slide, or your business model slide, it might not just be 1 slide, it might be 2 slides, depending on how much information you've decided to present. Some people decide to use infographics, not just words, so that might increase the number of slides that you use, but generally that's the standard. But what's important, like I said, is to be able to speak through your slides. Some people will come with 20 slides, but they know that they can quickly go through those slides in 5 to 10 minutes, and we won't feel like it's an information overload. So it really depends on you on how best you think you can communicate. But for benchmarking purposes, I'd say 9 to 12 slides in your deck.
Thanks for that, Yandile. So this is kind of like a question that's a continuation to one of the things that you highlighted. So this person is asking, if you misappropriated a grant received previously, is it advisable to include in the pitch deck, considering it's not a positive action?
Well, I would say that, you know, before you even get to asking for more funding, then probably they should have been corrective measures that have been in place due to that misappropriation. So they should at least be evidence that, you know, you've gone back to the person who was giving you the grant, either you've paid back the grant or you found ways to improve from the previous challenges you've had. You now have controls in place as your organization. In any case, if you don't do this, at the due diligence stage, it will come out. You know, people do ask for references. They do that due diligence to follow up on you. So I would advise that you don't hide anything. And if there's anything that you previously did not do well, I won't say this was intentional. Let's assume it was a mistake, but also due to lack of capacity and you being new in that experience. It's important to make sure that you maintain your relationships in the past. You go back and correct any challenges that you've had so that it doesn't jeopardize any future opportunity for you to acquire more funding. I think that's the advice I would give you. So anything you try and hide, it will come out eventually. So yeah.
Thanks for that, Yandile. I see someone asking a question about how many slides should the pitch deck have. Kindly, that question has just been answered, but the second part of your question has been asked repeatedly. So how many minutes should a pitch last?
So here it depends, and I think, Naomi, you can also advise, I don't know, in the pitching phase of our program, how many minutes everyone is going to be given, those that make it to that phase, shortlisting phase, but I think standard is usually 5 to 10 minutes, and those 5 to 10 minutes could also include a Q&A. So you literally have 5 to 6 minutes to pitch your story. In any case, also when you might bump into, remember I said pitch decks and pitches are not just for investors. You might, you've heard about the elevator pitch. So that's exactly what it is. You bump into someone in an elevator, you've got 5 minutes. How do you pitch your story, your impact and your potential? And you allure this person to give you 30 more minutes next time.
Thanks, Yandile. Next question is, how do you present financials when you're still not profitable?
Okay. So it's perfectly fine to mention that you're at pre-revenue stage. You haven't yet made any traction in the market, but it's important based on your research to speak about what you think is possible. So in other words, you would then project more, predict more, forecast more. You're going to speak in futuristic form and not in historical format. So in the way in which you do that, it goes back to your total market, your total addressable market. You look at the market and you say, look, we've got 10,000 people we can service in the market. So far, we're testing our product with about 10 that are not yet paying, but we think they're happy with the feedback. They might be the first 10 customers. We have the capacity to move from 10 to 100. And of these 100, our government is going to be selling at $100 each. We tend to make so much revenue over the next month, over the next 3 months. And so that's information that you use to communicate on your deck. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that sounds helpful. So we can move to the next question. When presenting your pitch deck, do you need a copy of your business plan at hand, or do you just run with your pitch deck?
So you just need your pitch deck, but things like your business plan are going to come at your due diligence stage. So your pitch deck is like 9 pages. Nobody gives you money based on 9 pages. So the due diligence stage, that's when if you've been existing, they'll probably ask for your financial statements. They'll ask for your bank account statements if you don't have any financial statements. They'll ask for your now proper business plan where you want to see what you say you want to do in greater detail. And chances are, when you're pitching to an investor, it's not just one person making a decision about you. There's an entire team that's going to be responsible for looking at every element or segment of your business plan. So in those 5 to 10 minutes, you don't need your business plan, but the business plan will come at the due diligence stage. If you do get a conditional interest or yes, based on your pitch deck. again, this is based on standard pitching. But in relation to the Fashionomics Accelerator, I think Naomi and team will elaborate further if anything of that sort is necessary at the next stage of the program.
Thanks for that, Yandile. There's a question which came from the beginning of the session. I'm not too sure I captured the essence of it correctly. It's been asked a second time. So I think it's around creating a problem statement, if that is necessary in the fashion industry. So just verbatim for the question to see if maybe you make sense of it. In the fashion sector, should we have a problem to resolve? So maybe should a pitch deck start from a problem statement?
Okay. So I think this doesn't necessarily have to start from a problem statement, but I imagine maybe if you're in the fashion industry, I did a bit of research. I was part of the team with Naomi and Labaki and team, CEP team, initially when we were starting, and I did some research on the textile industry. Apparently, based on the research on the Fashionomics website, it is the second highest employer in Africa. And part of what that means is that we tend to have more informal businesses than formal businesses. And chances are, I see a lot of women on this call as well. It's an industry that attracts more women, and that comes with its own challenges. You're speaking to issues of unemployment. You're speaking to issues of lack of access to funding, lack of access to finance. So one way or another, how you tailor your story, it could be what impact your fashion business is doing. Maybe you're creating jobs for 1 to 2 people, even if it's on a part-time basis. This is the impact that your business is providing in the community. And if you haven't started thinking about how what you do relates to climate action or climate change, I'll advise you to also do more research on that, so that you can understand the bigger story that your business or your talent or your product exists within. So I assure you, whatever it is that you're doing, there's a bigger problem that you exist within, that your talent and your crafts and your creativity is adding value to. So yeah, I would say that. But depending on the type of audience that you have, if you might just want to sell the product that you're doing. I imagine if you're pitching to a retailer and you want your products to be uptaken on their store, on their shelves, you can, you have to talk about the solution of the product that you have, the quality that it has. So I imagine trying to sell a story around the problem might not be necessary. So then again, it'll depend with your audience and the key message that you want to communicate. I hope that helps.
Can I just jump in here? Just because it has come up before. This is Ojama here.
Okay.
If you are thinking about the problem that you're solving for your customer, it will not look like like a tech company that says, oh, we're trying to solve the problem of sanitation for this city. It will be, what am I providing to the customer and what need is it meeting for that customer? So if my customer is a working age woman living in a city and I'm providing work attire, the problem that I'm solving for her is perhaps access to stylish work attire that's ready to wear and that's easily available. So you can also, in addition to what Yandile has said, hone it down very specifically to what is it you're doing for your customer. So maybe that's a way to reframe the question in your head. What are you doing for your customer? Because your investor needs to know that somebody is buying what you're selling. Even if you're saying the problem that you're solving is the need for luxury brands or luxury style that's unique and bespoke and nobody else has, it's still a need that your customer has. So think about it as, what are you doing for your customer? Maybe the question about what problem are you solving throws you a bit because you're in fashion, but just reframe it in your head as, what am I doing for the customers that I'm serving?
Thanks,
Ojama.
Do you have another
Next
question?
Yes. COVID put a lot of businesses down. Do you advise pitching for recovery?
So COVID had a lot of challenges, but it also had opportunities, right? A lot of businesses digitalized because of COVID-19, and as a result, reached more customers. However, I know that some businesses actually closed down as a result of COVID-19. My advice would be, I'm not sure I understand the pitch for recovery context, but in any given moment when you're pitching, you have to pitch an opportunity. So nobody is going to invest on a business that is no longer a going concern, okay? Even if maybe you've closed down. However, if you can prove that, okay, over the past 2 years, we could not produce anything, we could not function, but pre-COVID, this is what we were doing, and these are the numbers that we were hitting, and therefore we need a boost to get back into the market. This is how much we stand a chance to make. And also maybe there you can touch on, you know, the market and how the market now behaves, right? I imagine if you had a market that is currently buying your fashion products, is that market still the same market? Do they still have the same purchasing power? Do they still have the same level of income? Or maybe some of them have retrenched and lost their jobs. Some of them displaced, are they still living where they used to live, making, you remember the distribution aspect, making it difficult for you to reach your customer with the product that you would have reached. So I'd say depending on these, it's difficult to say yes or no, but if there's something you want to go for and maybe you're not operational anymore, you might want to look into providing that sort of data or doing research to be able to present that case. Yeah.
Thanks, Yandile. So we have this question. It's 2 questions which look like they're around transitioning from one business idea or including an old business idea. So the first question, is it a good idea to include other businesses you've been involved in your pitch? And the other question is, what if you have a new business idea different from the other one you have been running? How do you pitch it?
Okay. So in any given moment, I think we've got only 5 to 10 minutes. So I imagine you don't have space to pitch, let's say, 3 businesses, right? And chances are the audiences for those 3 different businesses are not the same. Or the types of investors or partners or talent that would work with you on that business idea are not the same. So I would advise that, you know, focus is usually important. And you also don't want to come across as, you know, when you're pitching and people invest in you, people also invest in people that show commitment and longevity over a long period of time. People who can prove, and that comes out when you're telling your story. People that can prove that over the past 5 years, they've been invested in this product or this industry. They've been invested in solving this challenge. And sometimes people are not going to invest in you and bet on you simply because your numbers are making sense. Sometimes they'll just take a bet on you. And so there's also this dual challenge in the market where, you know, you also have opportunistic entrepreneurs or startup founders who are not necessarily really interested in the areas that which they say they operate in, and therefore they tend to not attract resources. So you might want to be careful there. If you're presenting too many ideas, you know, what can someone identify you with? And then, you know, how can they come at the conclusion that you've been committed over a long period of time, and therefore, if they invest in you, you're not going to change to the next business idea. You're going to stick with the idea they've invested in or the business they've invested in, and ensure that there's a return on investment. So my advice would be to focus. But if you're someone with multiple businesses, try as much as possible, you know, to ensure that you're excellent in all those ideas, so that as you pitch, you tailor make each pitch to each business idea, and each audience that you're targeting, you ensure that you're giving them quality and that you've had a quality experience in your business. That's the advice I would give. But generally, I think focusing and being competent in one area before you start to think about diversification is always better. I think, Naomi, before you go to the next question, I also saw a question around what if you've got multiple products? Do you also talk about the niche products that you would be creating? If it's one business and you've got a variety of products, I mean, it's fashion after all. Nobody is expecting you to have, you know, the same clothes, for instance, right? We don't know what you might have. You might have different product lines. You might have you know, when you're doing your go-to-market strategy, you're going to talk about things like, I'm hoping you've covered this in the previous sessions, customer segmentation. So you're going to have different market segments, the luxury and those that just need basic clothes for you to look good. You also have a market with different, maybe low income, middle income, high income. I think it's a great thing that you can be able to communicate that in your go-to-market strategy deck, in your business model deck, that I'm serving different customer segments, and these are the products that are servicing these different customer segments. And it's important though, when you do that, also ensure that you've got data and statistics of how each of those customer segments are performing. So it's very likely that the customer segments are not all performing at the same rate. So you might find that the luxury market is giving you more revenue than your market that's just basically operating on a needs basis, and they're not operating on a luxury need basis. So you have to be able to show that as well when you're talking about your traction, or even if you can't show it, be able to speak about it, because it might come as a follow-up question after you present your financials. Somebody will want to dig deeper into what you've projected, what you forecasted, to say which of these markets that you put in place, which of these products that you put in place are selling the most, and probably do we need to invest more of our energy in. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Yandile. Again, this is the last question around content of the pitch. Is it very necessary to introduce yourself before pitching?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So do obviously say your full name. Yeah, but don't give us a paragraph about yourself, because remember, you've got 5 minutes, and also you have a chance at the end to then tell us your academic background, your experience. So definitely introduce yourself before you start.
Yandile, thank you. That will be it. We have run out of questions in the chat section. So we will just move on to housekeeping matters. Thank you very much, Yandile, for the engaging session. If there are any other questions that will be asked after this, we will forward them to you and share them with the participants thereafter.
Thanks, Naomi. I think I just see one more question. I think I can just address it before I exit. I think it's around intellectual property. How can one pitch on how he intends to engage tech? No, that's not the one. How does a small business protect the ideas they make their rounds pitching their business? I think that's coming from Muitepi. I think it's very important, Muitepi, anything that you're pitching, that you've contacted your relevant intellectual property authority body in the country and ensure that you've protected your works before you start sharing your ideas. But also, there's a way in which you can present what it is that you do without talking about, you know, the exposing your intellectual property. So speaking about the opportunity versus showing people how you produce your product. I don't know intellectual property in what context you're speaking about it, or the product that you're looking into, but generally in 5 to 10 minutes, I think it's impossible to share something for somebody to steal. But generally, before you present, ensure that you've contacted a relevant intellectual property authority body to protect your works. I think that's about it. Thanks, Naomi.
Thanks, Yandile. So we'll just move on to housekeeping matters. Again, we'll just review. We'll go through what we discussed yesterday about the exam, because again, we are getting a lot of questions on the side. So let's discuss the exam again. So again, we'll tell you, don't panic. The exam will test your knowledge of what you already know and the value addition from this accelerator program. So it will test knowledge areas that you are familiar with. So please don't panic. Again, we'll tell you a key requirement of this program in order to progress to the next phase is to complete the final exam. We request that you aim to complete the exam this Thursday. And if you're not able to do so, please let us know in advance by writing to us on Fashionomics Help Desk at CC Hub Nigeria My colleagues will share that email in the chat box. Again, the channel for communication around exam issues is Fashionomics Help Desk at CC Hub Nigeria. We will not be responding or committing to any communication around exams on side WhatsApp chats. A link to access the exam will be available, and we will give you till midnight for Western African time. That will be Thursday tomorrow. And this translates to CAT 12:59 a.m. This is for Central African time and South African Standard Time. And then for East African time, that translates to 1:59 a.m. If you will not have taken it and not communicated, you will automatically be disqualified. So again, what you'll need to know about the exam, again, we cannot emphasize more. All communications about the exam will need to be channeled to Fashionomics Help Desk at cchubnigeria.com. The clinic session and the exam are scheduled during the regular meeting times, which like today began at 2 p.m. Western African time, 3 p.m. Central African time and Southern African Standard Time, and 4 p.m. Eastern African time. It's during this time we will share the link for the exam in the Zoom meeting, your emails, WhatsApp group, and Moodle. That way it will be shared on multiple platforms just to ensure that you don't miss out on it. You will need to complete this exam within an hour of starting it. So when you hit the start button, it's going to be a timed exam. You will not need to complete the exam when we share it with you. It's when you get the exam and then you click on start. The moment you click on start, you will need to finish the exam within an hour because it's going to be timed. So the exam has 30 questions and you will be required to answer all of them. You only have one chance to complete the exam. You cannot retake the exam again. Once you have completed, double check that you have answered all questions and hit submit. So again, to recap on the next steps, the immediate next steps will be first the selection of the 25 participants who will be invited for pitch training. And these participants will be evaluated in the criteria that was shared with you in your welcome packs, which these participants will have attended at least 70% of the live sessions, which amounts to about 11 sessions, and obtained a score of 70% in this end of program exam. For those who came in after 3 sessions had been completed, we will still work off the 70% figure, which will be relevant to you. Again, certificates will be awarded to participants who will have attended at least 70% of the live sessions and obtained a score of at least 50% in the end of program exam. We will communicate to you your results in the first week of January. So finally, the learning material for your review has been shared with you on Google Drive, Moodle, and YouTube links on WhatsApp. We will continue sharing the updated sessions within the course of the evening. So where possible, you're encouraged to use both videos and the presentations to review the learning material. After this session, again, we will open the WhatsApp group for discussion and we will be available to answer your questions. So see you tomorrow at the same time for the final session of the Fashionomics Africa Accelerator Program, where we will have a 20-minute clinic facilitated by Ojoma Ochai, the managing partner for the creative economy practice. And then we will proceed to deploy the exam for you to take at your convenience. So when we share the link, we're not telling you, take the exam and finish it now. We are deploying the link to you. When you click on the link and then when you click on start the exam, that is when you will be required to complete it within an hour. So all we are doing in tomorrow's session is a clinic session, then thereafter deploying the link, and then we'll let you take the exam at your convenience, but it must be completed. Again, I cannot emphasize this more. It must be completed by midnight for those in the West African time zone, by 1:59 a.m. for Central African time and South African Standard Time, and 2:59 a.m. for Eastern African time. I hope that's clear. Again, we will open the WhatsApp group for discussions. You are more than welcome to ask your questions there, and we will be available to answer your questions in the WhatsApp chat, in the help desk email, and any urgent questions.
Naomi, there's some questions in the chat. Can we take those questions? I see that some of them are in French and other languages. So if somebody can translate and we can attempt to answer. For those asking about the time, the deadline to submit, to complete it, is midnight West African time on the 22nd of December. So you need to convert it to your time zone, because I see that there's different questions and people are getting confused. The thing to remember is midnight Nigerian time is West African time. And so convert it to your time zone. So if you're in a later time zone than Nigeria, like if you're in East Africa, it will be, the deadline will be early in the morning, around 2 a.m. or so on 23rd. So you just need to convert midnight 22nd of December to whatever time zone it is in your location. And I'd encourage you, don't wait till 1 hour before the time, because if you encounter a problem when you're trying to submit, it means you will be submitting after the deadline. I'd encourage you to do it as quickly as you can, even though you have until midnight. So I won't convert it to your time zone, just convert it to whatever time zone you are. The deadline is midnight West Africa time. I see there are questions about whether it's multiple choice. It is multiple choice, 30 multiple choice questions. It will be available in the 4 languages: English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic. Naomi, can you tell me what the other questions are and we can go through them?
So there's one about what is the goal of the clinic session?
It's to review at a high level some of the material and to share the link for the exam. So the link for the exam and any other instructions we have for you will be shared just before we send you the link for the exam tomorrow.
I think that's covered most of it, Ojoma. We just have someone asking if we can share the materials on email.
Okay, I guess we can do that, right, Naomi?
Yes, we can. And then there's another question from Rowaid about exam results. We've already communicated that you will learn of your exam results at the beginning of January. So I think that covers it, Ojoma.
Yeah. There's a question about how long will we have access to Moodle after the exam. We're just trying to confirm that with the project funder. At a minimum, I expect you will have access to it for at least a month. So you'll certainly have access into the new year, but we'll let you know when the deadline for access will be.
Okay. I guess we've covered all the questions, Ojoma. If you don't have any other comments to share, then we can bring the session to a close, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Naomi.
Thank you. Goodbye, see you tomorrow.